Hey everyone, Chip Kosei here with the latest edition of Laws for Life. I don't know if you can see behind me, we are at Algiers Point taking a nice gander across the river at the warehouses on the river. It's kind of an interesting view if you can see it, because normally you only see it from the Tchoupitoulas side of the river, and it's pretty nice to see how they look from this way. You can imagine those boats docking and offloading all the cargo that we use in our everyday lives. So I always think it's an interesting perspective to see how this river really is the origin, the lifeblood of everything we do here in the city. Today I want to talk to you about whether or not it's a good idea to start a corporation. Normally when you think about corporations, you think of the big ones like Johnson & Johnson or these other companies, but in fact, establishing and using a corporation as an individual can be a very, very useful tool for two reasons. Number one, it can have tax benefits in terms of what you pay on your taxes in a given year. And number two, it can shelter you from liability. So if you're the kind of person that has, let's say, multiple pieces of rental property, it may be a good idea to set up an individual corporation for each property to shield yourself from any sort of liability. Let's say a gas line explodes and kills people. You don't want that to affect your personal assets. You want any liability to be limited to the corporation and the assets of that corporation, which in this sense would only be that one piece of property. So a lot of people tell me, say, well, God, setting up a corporation, it seems like a very, very complex process. And in fact, it's not. It's cheap and it's easy. What I would recommend is first go to the Louisiana Secretary of State website and reserve a name. You need to make sure that you have a name that isn't already being used by someone else to avoid confusion. Once you've reserved that name, go to the IRS website, and you need to get a tax ID number. This will be a unique ID number that's associated with this corporation. At that point, once you have that number, you want to go back to the Louisiana Secretary of State website. There's a corporations tab, and you can click the link for filing original documents. Use your reserved name, use that tax ID number, and for about $60, you can then set up a corporation. To do so, you'll need to pick a president, vice president, and secretary treasurer. The beauty is that it can all be the same person. In addition, you'll also need to pick an agent for service of process. That means if you need to sue someone or if you get sued, that person will be named as the person to accept legal documentations on behalf of the corporation. Usually it will be yourself at your home address. Then finally, you need to establish some other documents like a corporate charter. You might have to do articles of organization. And basically what that does is it keeps on file with the Secretary of State's offices what your purpose for your corporation is. And really it can be limited to something, or maybe really broad, like any sort of business for any lawful purpose. The only caveat to that will be that you need to then file a separate tax return for each corporation every year, and you will also need to file an annual report, and it's very cheap. It's like $5 or $10. You can do it all online just to keep your corporation active. Insofar as tax benefits, don't want to get too far into the weeds here because I'm not a tax attorney. I would suggest you consult a CPA to determine what sort of corporate status you want to have, whether it's a subchapter S, and there's some benefits in terms of flowing through any income and losses from that corporation to your personal return, and you have to do some other things like pay yourself a monthly salary, but it doesn't have to be any sort of significant or minimum amount. I sure hope this helps you in terms of your everyday life to protect yourself, benefit your tax payments. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me at 588-9500, or you can email me, chip@koseelaw.com. Hope this video helps. We'll talk again soon. Thanks.